Okay, looks like we are live and direct. This is Stephen R. from Zygote and Architects and Heroes. And today we have the amazing Jeffrey Tice from Subplot Recordings in San Francisco. How's it going, Jeffrey?
I'm well. How are you, Stephen?
You know, just living the pandemic dream, as it were. Before we jump into everything, I want to make a couple of announcements about the show. The first one is, as you know, we try to do these every Tuesday at noon. If we don't have a live stream happening on any given noon, we also will have stuff from the archive. Like a few weeks ago, we did a guy called Gerald from UTech in 2012, and we've got some other things that we can put in there as well. But as a rule of thumb, we do this every Tuesday at 12 o'clock. We also have a new Twitch channel, which is twitch.com/DJ Stephen R. That one, haven't really messed with it much. It's just new. Second thing is I will be doing a DJ set live on the Isolator and Friends show on Thursday at 7 p.m. So shout out to Claire and to Peter, and thank you for that. And then that's it. That's all for official announcements. That's all I got. I'll have more next week, I'm sure. So Jeffrey, thank you so much for doing this. I really, really appreciate you doing the interview. So
Stephen, thank you, because I've been keeping up with your show, and some of the past guests have been, as you know, friends of mine and people that I respect a lot. So thank you. It's an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. And we were talking about this a little bit offline before about what a small world it is and how our paths have overlapped in different places and different cities, and how it's kind of all culminated into this community of people that we all kind of work together and on some level. But before we jump into kind of where you are right now and what you're doing right now, can you tell me a little bit about your background and kind of how you got started DJing and producing and being involved with music?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess it all started when I was probably 12 or 13. My older brother Chris, he's about 4, maybe 5 years older than me. He was going out. He had kind of just graduated from high school. Was going out to clubs in Austin. Kind of dance clubs and stuff, and so he was bringing home all this really great music, and this was kind of how I got. Well, actually, when he was still in high school, a DJ friend of his from high school gave him a mixtape, and literally that cassette changed my life. It had Yaz and Erasure and New Order and Depeche Mode and and all it was the who's who of everything I had never heard before and needed to hear. And that one cassette, we called it the other tape because it was unlike any of the other tapes we had laying around. We talk about the other tape. Anyway, I was 12, and that is when it started. I guess later on, when I was in high school, started sneaking out to go to clubs, and I was obviously not old enough to get into them, but figured that out and got in anyway. And then, so through all of this music that my brother was introducing me to, I started collecting 12-inch singles of like New Order and Depeche Mode, Erasure, Pet Shop Boys, all kind of synth pop stuff going on, right. And then kind of branched out from there. And I had a friend named Cisco in high school, and he had a couple of turntables and a mixer, and it was just kind of the natural next step to start mixing stuff together to see, because I had been to the clubs and I had heard that, and I thought it was really cool, transitions and kind of the creativity that can go into that. And so, and I had all these records laying around, so we just kind of thought, well, let's try this. And so I did, and turned out that I was okay. I was
okay.
And
killing it.
So then, after that, after high school, a couple of people who ended up to be close friends of mine, Steve Carmel and Marie Carmel and Steve Weschler from San Francisco had moved to Austin, and they had been going to raves in San Francisco in this really early 90s, and
right.
Especially were influenced by The Gathering and by Wicked. And so they brought that vibe to Austin, and kind of out of popsicle sticks and duct tape created the rave scene in Austin. And I met them pretty early on, and I mean, I was kind of a spectator at first and just dancing and being there for the parties and stuff, but eventually started DJing at some of these warehouse parties and stuff.
And what were the warehouse parties called? Oh, just really quick, Jeffrey, if you could be maybe just a little bit closer to wherever the mic or the sound source is there.
Yeah.
It was clipping out just a tiny bit. I think it's just distance. But what were those parties? These were now, just to be clear, this is when you were growing up in Austin, Texas, yes?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the parties that you had played early, like what were those parties called? Because I know you mentioned Proteus, because I remember Proteus.
Yeah. So Proteus came a little bit later. These early parties, I guess. So that we used to have parties in Zilker Park on the weekends, kind of daytime park parties. And some of those, Seville Lilly, who was a big part of the rave scene in the early days of Austin, had parties called Toe Jam, which he claims that he didn't understand what Toe Jam was. But, anyway, so we had Toe Jam, and there were things called Barefoot in the Park and stuff like that. Those were kind of the first things I started playing at. But then came along, so the rave scene in Austin kind of had a year or two where so these really inspiring and great parties happened and this family formed, and then some stuff happened and it kind of died out a little bit. But some friends of mine, CJ and Benjamin and Shane, they had a little warehouse space that they started throwing these really small parties at. It was called Positive Space, and that was kind of it was like a homemade link between the big explosion of the rave scene at first, and then Proteus, which came next, and then again the rave scene in Austin kind of blew up into the stuff that the Candy Raver stuff, which was after we worked on. But
wow. So in terms of like, because the first thing that I noticed when I first got exposed to Subplot Recordings, the first thing that I noticed in terms of like my own personal connection, because you know that I went to college in Texas. I went to SMU, and I remember when Fair Park Recordings was up and running, and everything that Sean and Miles and the Hazy Days crew was doing back in the day. At what point? I mean, because it makes sense, because it's very like the DIY aesthetic to come in and connect with other people in the closest towns that you're in, and kind of come together and do parties and stuff. How did you get connected with like Robert Taylor and Brett Johnson and Wands Dover and all those guys that are kind of loosely affiliated with the rave scene in Dallas?
Yeah, so Dallas and Austin are we're like, I think it's like 3 or 4 hours driving apart. So there was a lot of driving back and forth between a lot of people between those two cities and the parties. Mm-hmm. When Proteus was going on, which I guess we'll get into later, a big part of Proteus was the club kid aspect, and so Brooke Humphreys in Dallas would bring down, Mike Wallig and James and Richie Rich and all those guys, and so I would drive up to Dallas with my friends and go to those parties. Mm-hmm. That was when I first met Robert Taylor, though he doesn't remember it, because I just went up to him and asked him what that record was that he was playing. It turned out to be Joe Jackson, some K-Class remix that I was blown away by. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Robert and I became really good friends much later. Anyway, so there was this connection between all the cities in Texas, because they're not that far apart. Houston is 3 hours, Dallas is 4. So Brett Johnson lived in Austin when we met, which was in like probably 93 or 94. Mm-hmm. Again, Proteus comes into this. He won a contest at Proteus that was like a DJ contest that my friend James Neal put on, and was always there and hung out at the 16th Street House, which was kind of if you were there, if you know. So Brett and I go way back, and we were never super close, like back in the long time days, in the olden timey days. But we've gotten closer in recent years. He'll come when he's got shows in San Francisco. Sometimes he'll come stay with us and that kind of thing. But
it's so funny.
I think my husband John was probably better friends with Brett back
in Austin
in the early '90s than I was. I kind of had my little clique too. So.
It's just so funny how far flung those connections are, because So you brought up Brooke Humphreys, who was a key part of the club kid scene in New York City, and actually was in Party Monster, characterized in the Party Monster movie about all of that stuff. And Brooke is in Dallas, and then you think, okay, Hazy Days, and you've got Brett Johnson, you've got Robert Taylor, and you also have Clay, who's now in San Francisco, who was working with Sunset Sound System. And it's just that 1 degree of separation. And I feel like you're kind of this, this bridge between the San Francisco scene and Texas in a lot of ways. And I'm curious, I know as a DJ and a producer and someone who's kind of coming up and kind of figuring out, getting your bearings, at some point you've made that decision to become a label owner and really spend time working on a record label. How did that transition, I guess, happen from being like DJ producer to moving to like, now I want to start a record label? Yeah. So I think it was kind of a lot of things happened all really quickly, all kind of at the same time. So I was I guess in 2015, I started releasing music on labels that I kind of connected through with friends and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that was really exciting for me because I've been producing since, how technical you want to get, since I was 8, but depending on what producing is, right? So 2015, I had my first actual release, and that was really exciting, and that kind of kept rolling, and I kept putting stuff out. But I think one of the main things that kind of influenced me to start Subplot was that, I had always wanted to run a label, but I had never really had the confidence to do it. And so, I don't remember how long ago it was or what year, whatever, but a while back, so John and I, my husband John and I, and Megan Stamey, we went to see the Giants play a game at what was then the AT&T Park. And after the show, we were on Muni, which was a train in San Francisco, and I was in my emails, and one of the emails that came up was the Erasure newsletter. So Erasure has been my favorite band since I was 13, back when my brother got that other tape, right? So right. In the newsletter, I was reading it and all the new stuff going on with Erasure. And then always at the last section of their newsletter, they have a section called Something for the Weekend, where they feature random Erasure stuff. And it happened to be on that train ride that day after the Giants game, the Something for the Weekend was about a mashup that I had made and put on SoundCloud that Andy Bell found and loved. And so they put it in their newsletter, and then it was awesome. This is my favorite band in the world, and always has been. So it was huge for me. This actually, so that was one thing that happened. That actually happened 10 to 15 more times. Me being the Erasure newsletter for mashups. It's happened like 10 to 15 times. What is the moniker that you record your mashups on? Copy Correct. Copy Correct. Dude, I love those mashups that you do. Like sincerely, like I kind of like I kind of fanboy out on those of yours because they're just so fucking good, man. So good. So congrats on that. If you could possibly move just a teeny tiny bit closer. Am I quiet again? You don't have to be like right on top of it, but just a little bit. You're like just this the whole time. Okay. All right. No, just a little bit more. It's fine. I was hearing everything okay. Just okay. It's just part of the live thing, man. This is the joy of live television. Remember when they used to say that back in the day? This is the joy of live TV. Well, I'm feeling the joy of live TV. The copy. I'm sorry. Say the moniker one more time. Copy Correct, which was a play on copyright. Because mashups, I can't. That's the thing with Copy Correct. So they're mashups. I can't really release them. I can't make money off them. So it's really just a project of passion that I love to do, and it's fun. And I think it seems like other people like it. So I've been a big fan of those. And you also had a story that's somewhat similar. You had mentioned Erasure, and I didn't know that about the newsletter. First of all, that would be just mind blowing. I was like,
What?
I know.
I was reading an email on the train, and then there's me,
and there's I am on my favorite band's freaking newsletter. That's amazing. Okay. Second thing, you mentioned you had a similar story with Alex Patterson of the Orb.
Yeah. So, this all started, Little Fluffy Clouds, right? So it's classic, just iconic. And I had I took a track that I had put together years and years and years ago, and kind of laid the vocal of Ricky Lee Jones from Little Fluffy Clouds kind of over the top of it, and did a little editing here and there. And then I called it Little Fluffy Cowboys. Which is kind of a hybrid of Little Fluffy Clouds and Flying Cowboys, which was the release where the Orb got the Ricky Lee Jones sample. Right. And then, I think it was a long time, like maybe years later, Alex Patterson was in San Francisco, and he was doing a DJ show at a place called Brick and Mortar, which is literally 3 blocks from my apartment.
I was at that show.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's when he did like a DJ set, and it's like
and there was like 12 people there. Yeah, there were like 12 people out there. Like
I was shocked. It was like I was in awe. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just walked up, kind of like in the middle of his DJ set. So before the show, I thought, I've got this kind of Orb tribute track. I'm gonna burn it to a CD, and if I can give it to him, just because I thought it was okay. I thought it was a pretty good job, and I thought maybe you want to hear it. So about halfway through his gig, I just walked up to the DJ setup where he was mixing, and I just placed it on top of whatever was there. And I guess it was still another long time later that he had posted a link to a Beats in Space radio program, which is a radio show out of New York that they feature lots of super great artists. He had done a show with them, and I think I was just listening. It was kind of like being on the train with Erasure again, all over again. I was just listening to this mix of Alex Patterson in New York, and all of a sudden he was playing that track that I had burned a CD and laid on his turntable or whatever it was that I laid on. I don't remember, but and so again, I'm like, fuck, what's going on? So that was another cool thing. And then it turns out, after that, then I kind of every now and then would search like the Orb, Jeffrey Tice, Little Fluffy Clouds online, and things kept coming up where he was at this festival in Japan, or he was doing this radio show or whatever, or this magazine featured a mix, and he kept playing that track on all of his mixes for about a year.
That's so good.
Yeah, it was cool.
I think there's something really interesting, and I think it's somewhat unique to electronic music and electronic musicians. There's such a culture of, taking a track and reworking a track and doing sanctioned or unsanctioned mixes just because of the technology and the ability to get these stems, and because the very nature of electronic music in general is a little bit more like, oh, I know where that sample comes from to build whatever the case may be. But there's also this like exchange, this sort of friendly exchange of remixing culture that happens more like the copy correct version, where you're just like, hey man, because that was, if you remember like the early 2000s, that was just when things kind of, in that realm kind of blew up, and that was just at the time that, the file sharing thing was kind of coming. It had come into its own in the 90s, but I think in like 2000, between like 2004 and 2008, there was just this big explosion of like blogs and Bloghouse and samples and remixes and unsanctioned remixes. Yeah. But I think it's really unique when someone, it speaks to your ability as a producer, right? I think more than anything to say like, hey, I took the original, I did this remix, and guess what? Alex Patterson and Erasure are putting my shit on blast. So first of all, that's gotta be, there's some gratification there, right? So
yes.
So with that kind of that full head of steam, and you've got these experiences where people are responding really well to what you're doing. How does that kind of
question, right? Like why did I start a label? And
exactly.
So all of these things were happening. So there's another weird thing that happened with Erasure. So copy correct. I had done this mashup of erasures go from Crackers International, or sorry, stop from Crackers International, and Yazoo's don't go from Upstairs with Eric's. And a guy in Peru actually, I guess he found it on SoundCloud again, and he made a video, a really great mashup video of this mashup that I had done. And so he put it on YouTube. And then the next thing I know, I was in Texas for my cousin's wedding. And I was in a hotel, kind of hanging out by the pool with my dad and his and my stepmom Tammy, and I was just on my iPad flipping through stuff, and I was on the NME magazine website, which I guess most people know NME is the New Music Express and has been around forever, and is kind of iconic. Like if you want to be in a magazine, that's on the list. So I was scrolling through their website, and there was this video that this guy in Peru had made of my mashup, and so I mean, I was flipping out again, and I actually tweeted it to Vince Clark, and kind of said, hey, here's another one of those mashups I did of you guys, but this time NME kind of likes it, and he was kind of excited about it, and he reposted it and tagged Andy Bell and stuff, and so that was kind of another thing. So anyway, all of these things were happening, and it gave me the confidence, and I was kind of like, well, maybe people are into what I'm doing, and so that's where Subplot came from. I had all this positive feedback from from my idols, even and friends and stuff, and I thought, if they're into it, maybe I can. I've always wanted to have a label. Maybe if I try it, people will be into it, and so that was how Subplot started. So that's.
That was sort of the origin.
I started anyway. So through all of those kind of things that were going on, I just built the confidence and thought, well, maybe this will be a good thing. And so
I think that's fantastic, because I think there's something, especially when you do it as with a family of people, and I think the rave scene and electronic music and club scene in general has a definitely a more definitively sort of community vibe to it, right? When you work on things, and like I support Slope 114, I support Subplot Recordings, and then Mark is mastering stuff for you guys, and then I'm working with Mark on my stuff in studio. I mean, it's just what's that?
I would say I'm super excited that Mark Pistol is gonna master our next record.
Yeah, no, I was just in town. In fact, I got back last night. I was just in town, and I had a session with them at the end of last week on Thursday and Friday, and I've got 2 tracks mastered that are going to press, and I just could not be seriously.
Are they Zygote tracks?
Yeah, new Zygote tracks. So yeah, I'm working on a full length. The idea is I'm working on a full length, and then I'm putting out 7s of like singles as I go until I get all of the material together. Because you know how it is, man. It's like you never know where you're going to be in the process. So I'm taking what I can get, and I'm going to move with it as quickly as possible.
Yeah,
I've been sitting on stuff forever too. So it's like I think the last thing I released was like 9 years ago. It's time, But back to the label thing. So how is it that because I just see you're just grinding all the time. Like I see and you have you are everywhere. You're on Mixcloud, you're on Beatport, you're on SoundCloud. Like basically, if you can stream stuff there, Subplot Recordings has a presence there. As your job working as a label owner versus you as a producer and an artist and a musician and DJ. How is balancing those two things out for you?
Well, I think I don't know if there's a lot of balance. I haven't been making music for a while. I haven't made a lot of my own music for a while. I've been kind of doing a few copycat mashups here. But as far as original stuff, I've sort of taken a little bit of a break because of Subplot, but that's okay. I'm liking what I'm doing with Subplot. I mean, with Subplot, I'm basically kind of putting out my friends' music. I have a lot of friends that make great music, and that was another inspiration for starting the label, was that I've got a lot of friends that make really great music, and I mean, they could put it out on other labels, but I thought, why not do it on mine? So, So yeah, there's I guess the main thing that's happened is that I'm not producing as much of my own stuff lately, which is probably good because I was putting out a bunch of stuff for a while, and maybe taking a break is a nice thing.
Yeah. And so with your focus kind of being on the running of the label for now, and obviously DJ gigs, unless you're live streaming, aren't really happening. You know, in terms of like the operation of the label, has, you know, our current situation, has that changed the way that you normally handle releases? Like, how has that landscape kind of changed for you in the pandemic world?
Yeah, so with COVID, I think the first thing that affected Subplot with COVID was the latest Kickstarter that the first thing that I thought was going to affect our Subplot was the Kickstarter that we did for, we're doing a second vinyl release of Zach Mead's, and the track's called In Awe. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be remixes by me and David Harness, and even Hard Floor, which I'm super psyched about.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Right?
Oh, I'm already on there. I'm waiting on my package in the mail. Yes.
Oh, that's right. You ordered one. So with COVID, when I decided that I was going to do this Kickstarter, I thought it's not going to work. It's just not going to work. People are out of work. People aren't focused on art. People aren't focused on music. Mm-hmm. I'm going to do this just to say I tried. And when it doesn't work, I'll say, well, I tried. But it did. And we raised more. We went over a goal. And so the record's happening and I'm really excited. So to be honest, COVID hasn't affected Subplot a whole lot. A lot of what we do is in the box and through computers and emails and stuff anyway. So there's not a lot of personal interaction, like physical space interaction that happens. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I think we haven't been affected all that much. Really.
So there hasn't any, like the dynamic really hasn't changed because of what's happening online? That's
well, I mean, you know, yeah, I guess everyone's very aware of COVID and stuff, and there are some political aspects that have come into play, and that we've, you know, we try to address some of that sometimes. But as far as the operations of Subplot, I don't feel like it's been affected that much. We've kind of taken a break from accepting. We were getting a lot of submissions of demos and stuff, and so I've kind of cut back from that a little bit because we're trying to get this record done, and we've got some stuff lined up already. And when I say we, it's just me. So,
I mean us.
When I say we, I'm talking about me and every artist that's ever been on the label and everything. But as far as we're going to do something with Subplot, that's me. So.
Oh my God. That is so funny. Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because when you have an independent entity that's putting things out, and, you know, I had released things for years, and then I kind of abruptly stopped doing things around 2014, just because the formats were changing. There was a lot of kind of upheaval, kind of a second round of upheaval, and I had a partner that I'd been working with who was also the graphic designer for the label, and we kind of went our separate ways. And when that happened, I just kind of pressed pause to think like, well, I mean, a lot of the format of stuff that we were putting out was on CD, which was really rapidly becoming irrelevant for a lot of, I know a lot of people. No. I mean, I know a lot of people still release CD. A lot of people still release CDs, but it's like there was at one point where our sales were at a certain level, and then literally, like, you know, they started to drop off. And I thought, well, if we're going to spend that kind of money, you know, maybe it's time to kind of hold back and think about it. And that's where the sort of the concept of digital releases for us kind of made more sense. Now, you, for the label, you saying this is the project that you're putting out. I'm sorry, tell me the name of the artist again that's coming out.
So his name is Zach Meads. He lives in San Antonio, and I guess we skipped right over Proteus, but he used to hang out at Proteus and stuff. He's an old friend from the early 90s that that I wasn't super close to back in the day, but have been for a while.
So let's talk about Proteus for a minute, if we can go back, and then we can revisit the release. Tell me about the Proteus years.
So, I don't remember a lot.
I don't know. Yeah, I heard it was good. I got some photos. I'm not in jail. It's fine.
Right, yeah. We made it. We're alive. We're here. So Proteus was a club in Austin, and that's an understatement. I think, I mean, like I said, the club kids were a huge part of that scene, and we had some super talented people that were DJing and people that were dressing up and being the kind of, I mean, it wasn't just the music that was the entertainment. We had the club kids that were, it was almost like I don't want to say freak show because I feel like that's not as, doesn't give as much respect to the art that was involved. But it was kind of a freak show. I mean, it was an artful freak show, and it was wonderful, and people loved it, and people would come and pay to get into that building just to see it. And then we were playing some okay music too. The DJs were me and Warren. Well, Herb was the main DJ. Herb was kind of Proteus all together. Herb out of Austin. And then Spencer and Mark Dean and Joey Foley. And there were a lot of really great DJs at Proteus. And I think people just identified with the music. And so I think, and there were some drugs going around at the time people were into, and it was quality stuff. And so there was kind of this trifecta of music and drugs and art and visuals that kind of, and people that kind of all came together, and it was magical. And I think that, you know, we had a reunion in 2010, so it's been 10 years now. We had another one in 2011 too, but then that was the last reunion Proteus had. But I think the fact that we had those reunions, like, what was like 15, 20 years later, kind of shows that it wasn't, you know, it wasn't just a bunch of kids on drugs that didn't care about anything, but we were a family that kind of sprawled out of that. And it's weird how connected we are. The people that have Proteus as a club in their vocabulary are all very close and all very connected, and I think probably always will be. It's pretty cool.
I think that's amazing. I think it's great to be able to look back, especially with some of the experiences I think we all collectively had in different scenes in different cities or whatever. And I think it's good to kind of have that, you know, even I went through and found a bunch of old mixes and a bunch of old photos and things from Under the Radar that I did in San Francisco for 5 years back in the early 2000s. And that was like, you know, it's just crazy the people that came through and the people to see what they're doing now, and, you know, and kind of bringing it to today. And frankly, looking back and go, okay, well, for who was this a sprint? For who was it? Is it a marathon? Right. So you still see people today that were kind of kicking, you know, around back then, and they're doing really great things. I mean, I look at Dimitri and Slope 114, and they are killing it. They're doing amazing things. You know, Mark Pistol doing amazing things between Consolidated and Meatbeat and Hercules and Love Affair, and like all of these people that have been around and doing things. I think there's just kind of like, you've got the people that were mostly there for the party, and then there are people that I like to refer to as the architects that were like, we are here to build something and create something and have sort of a lasting legacy, which I think a lot of those people that were back and around back then are the same people I'm starting to engage with now, which for me personally, it's like, okay, good. I didn't imagine all that. You know, at some point you're like, I'm pretty sure this happened, but I can't get any outside validation, you know? And that brings us to today. So the friend from Proteus is now your next release, which is awesome. And where are you with that particular release?
So right now, we're close. We're close to getting it to mastering. So we've got all of the remixes except for a couple. David Harness is still working on. He's actually going to do 2 remixes now. It started off he was just going to do 1, but he wanted to do 2, and I was like, well, okay. So I'm just waiting on his remixes, and then once I get those, I've got the hardcore remix, I've got my remix, and obviously we have the original. As soon as I get the 2 we're waiting on, then we're gonna send them off to Mark himself for mastering at Studio 5 here in San Francisco. And then RB, who is, I have to mention, is my graphic designer at Subplot, and he's done some amazing work. If anyone that has seen our cover art probably can appreciate RB. He just had rotary cuff surgery, so he's a little bit, we're waiting for him to heal.
Yeah.
Can't really work a whole lot right now. We've got basically the front cover for the vinyl release is done, but we've still got the labels for the actual record and the flip side of the cover to get the design work done. So we've got a little bit of a delay we're dealing with, but that's totally fine. And I wish RB all the best, and we'll get to it when we get to it. But as soon as all that's done, then we're just sending it off to get pressed. And so I'm thinking probably the record will be out. I'm hoping for January or February.
That's awesome. That is fantastic. Well, congratulations on that. And, I was curious too, Dimitri and Slope 114 have been active in their releases on Kickstarter as well. And it looks like Kickstarter has been a successful channel for you. Looking at that, not just Kickstarter, but looking at running a label at all in 2020, not just the pandemic, not just if you take the pandemic off the table, hard to do, I know, but if you just take that off the table and you look at, say, all of the other variables that impact what goes on with people that work in arts and entertainment, what advice would you give to somebody who is maybe wanting to start up their own label right now?
Well, I think I'm not really good at giving advice, but I can tell you what I did that seems to have worked or be working is to just kind of go with what you know. A lot of the actually a lot of all of the releases on Subplot are, again, like I mentioned, friends of mine, people that I know in the real world that make great music just coincidentally. And so I think that going with what you know includes artists that you're familiar with, people that you know on a personal level, because sometimes in music there can be a lot of BS, and if you're friends with the people you're working with, it's a little less likely to have to deal with that stuff. And so yeah, just keep it. God, I hate to say keep it real, but like just work with people you know, but don't be afraid to branch out to friends of friends, because that's how I've met people like Mark Pistell and like even Dimitri and Elise actually I met Elise a long time ago, and then so just be open to meeting people, but to stay kind of close to people you know is a good thing. I'm like I said, I'm bad at giving advice.
Well, I mean, it's what works for you, though, right? Like I think at the end of the day, it's helpful for people who have been maybe on the production side for a long time, who haven't been on the label owner side, and now they have, for a variety of reasons, have to take over the reins of their own career, or frankly to say like, okay, well, we're in the middle of this kind of unprecedented time in the United States, on the global scale, really, of what's going on, and how do we readjust and apply a broad-based skill set to bringing that music to people in different ways. I mean, I would have never thought in a million years that we would have had live streaming be sort of the format du jour of everything. But I had on Sean Horton, who's the founder of the Decibel Festival. I had him on a few weeks ago, and looking at streaming as now another kind of on the event production side to say, okay, streaming now allows me to see an artist that I really want to see through this virtual channel. Now maybe streaming could be in addition to, like, hey, this band is playing, these DJs are playing, this event is happening. So I think there's some silver lining to this too. But part of, I think, starting an independent label is almost an exercise in just like not waiting for something to happen to you, but making things happen, which I've always loved the punk rock DIY aesthetic anyway, to just say like, we're not waiting for anyone. We're just going to go do what we're going to do, which I have a lot of respect for.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of the thing with punk and also with early rave stuff, was very DIY, and I'm right there with you with respecting that kind of approach.
Yeah, and so I don't think this is a big secret. I think those in the Bay Area who have known you for a while or who follow Subplot Recordings know that you are headed back to the Lone Star State. So could you maybe talk a little bit about that, and then maybe talk about what your plans are once you get back to Texas, once you get back to Austin and get settled in there?
Yeah, so I mean, I've been in San Francisco now for about 14 years. My husband has been here for about 15. We were doing a back and forth relationship for a year before I decided, we decided that I would just come on and move out here. So we've been here for a little while. We love San Francisco. We love it. We're not leaving because we don't love San Francisco, and because we're at any lack of wonderful friends in our lives here. But we are going back to Austin because it's my home, and all of my almost all of my family is in Austin. John's brother lives there. His parents aren't terribly far away. People are getting older. Our families are getting older. We want to be close to them. I've got nieces and nephews that are growing up without, I see them, and then the next time I see them, they're a foot taller, and so that's weird. So it's mostly about friends and family is why we're moving back. As far as music goes, I don't think much will change. I hope much, I hope we progress, but I don't think a lot's going to change with Subplot.
Right.
Like I said, most of what we do is through computers and the internet and that kind of thing anyway. So a lot of the we don't need to be in the same room with someone to make things happen. So
yeah, absolutely.
But I'm very excited about coming back to Austin. It's been like 16 years since I lived there. So, or about that. So I'm excited to get back.
That's a lot of South by Southwest that have happened between.
I was going to say, I'm not looking forward to the weather. That's the one thing I'm not excited about. But yeah, hopefully we'll start up again. I've done a couple of South by Southwest shows, 2018, and I guess, or maybe it was, 2018. Oh yeah, and then last year we ended up streaming because this whole COVID thing had started. I guess that was this year. Wait, I'm getting mixed up. Anyway.
Time is a social construct. I'm really at the point where I'm like, what day is it? No idea. Where am I? I don't know. I'm somewhere. I don't know. No idea.
It doesn't matter as much as it used to.
It kind of doesn't. Yeah, it kind of doesn't. So, thinking about, obviously, the geographic change that you're going to be, that's upcoming. Do you guys have a time frame, or are you just kind of playing it by ear?
I was just on the phone with a realtor this morning. He's going to send us some places to look at. He knows what we're looking to spend and what we're looking for. And he's going to send us some options to kind of get a feel for, what we're looking at as far as houses go and what areas and stuff we might want to be interested in. So as soon as we get that sorted and we get a house, it's kind of, how long does it take to buy a house? That's about when we're going to move to Austin.
Yeah, that's really. Are you planning on doing anything that's, I guess, more online oriented around the label, or are you going to stay the course with what you're doing right now?
I haven't given that a lot of thought, actually, Steven. I feel like what we're doing is working, but obviously you can't just do the same thing over and over again and expect it to keep working. Right. But I haven't really figured that out. So. Sorry.
Baby step. No, that's okay. I didn't know I was going to be streaming until I started streaming, and now I'm streaming. You just kind of. That's one thing I will say, and I've had this conversation with a few friends, a few creatives. There are kind of two big things I think the takeaway has been for me in the middle of a pandemic, or because of the pandemic. One is just, you have to be flexible enough in your life to know that you really don't know. You really don't know what's going to happen the next day, but you have to just say, okay, I'm going to do something about whatever happens, but I'm outside of my control for a large part.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to adapt to the things that happen, because if I don't, and I think I can control anything, that's where things are going to get really ugly. And two, just kind of be cultivate. I have a kind of a fledgling meditation practice, but there's always sort of this comeback to present time awareness. Don't overthink what's going to happen, tomorrow. Don't try to fix what happened in the past. Try to be present in the moment. Those are kind of the two things that if I hadn't cultivated, I would have gone batshit crazy already.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Very much the same. I haven't been meditating as much as I used to lately, but it certainly does help. And being present is super helpful. As a lot of people watching may know, I've suffered with some mental illness problems, like since I was about 20 years old. And some really serious stuff, and anxiety is one of those things. And so when I'm luckily, I haven't had I haven't had any problems lately, so that's been nice. But anxiety, it always helps me to remind myself to just be present and not think about. I've got like a weird mark on my head now.
Don't think about that.
Not be too worried about the present. I mean, and about the past or the future, and just kind of stay in the moment. So yeah, I totally hear you on that, and meditation is super helpful with that.
Well, and I think since you did bring it up, I want to say that when you share those things online, which I follow you on social media, when I see those things online and I hear you kind of like just openly talk about it and talk about what your process looks like and how you handle that, that's a huge thing. That's a huge thing for me personally, because I deal with some similar issues, and to have someone out there who's going through that, experiencing that, to just sort of verbalize it, to kind of put it out there, to kind of, I guess you're not verbalizing it, it's tag, whatever, but but you put it out there, and it's it's really helpful for people. I think you probably are helping a lot more people than you realize by talking about what you're going through, and I think that circles back to the idea of community, right? I mean, everybody knows that, like, if you're with a tight-knit group of people, they're not going to let you do something too stupid. They're going to take care of you. And I think as we grow up and we grow older and our lives change and the dynamics in our lives change, I think there's still that element of that. And, I know that social media and the internet I got so many ideas, so many thoughts about that. But there's the part of it that's been really wonderful is to reconnect with people like you and to know what the connective tissue is between us, and to share in this way that we are here in a way too as well, to kind of continue to build that community in some way, shape, or form. And I think what you do and what you share about what you're personally going through is a big part of that. So thank you very much for that.
Well, you're welcome. I think so when I first started posting about mental health and my struggle with it, like, it was totally selfish, and I was just, or not selfish, but it was about me, and it was about expressing my frustration, expressing my struggle, and expressing the hard times I was having. But I quickly came to notice that a lot of people were responding to it, and they were responding in a way, mostly in private messages to me, about how they were grateful that I was talking about it, because people don't talk about mental health and our struggles with it. And so people were, I was getting tons of messages daily about people saying, thank you for saying this. I wish I could say this, but I can't. And here's why, and here's what I'm going through. And it sounds a lot like what you're going through. What do you do when blah, blah happens? And what do you do so and so? And so that's why I kept doing it. Initially, it was just about, like, I'm frustrated and I kind of want to bitch about it. But it became something that was like, okay, now I'm doing this because I know that people are listening, and I know that people want to hear this, and I know that people need to hear this. And so, yeah, I mean, I talk about stuff that sometimes people aren't comfortable talking about.
Well, I think it's high time that we get comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I don't see any of that changing. And in fact, I would say that, a big part for me, at least when this all first started, it was so anxiety producing. It was so like, holy shit, a pandemic. Like, that's a really heavy thing to wrap your head around. So it's like, just even if you have zero exposure, but you're still kind of hearing this drumbeat of, like, and then, of course, our current political situation does not help things much at all. In fact, that was like the core, like, my core anxiety was always revolving around our political situation. Now we got a pandemic. Cool. Yeah. Why not just throw in a pandemic? It's fine. Good to go. But I do think there's a lot to be said about maintaining your focus and your mental well-being and finding ways to cope in a community of creative people, because most people that are creative are right-brained people are more sensitive to things. If you're more sensitive to things, you're more apt to do crazy shit. And I think sharing it, being involved with some outlet like creating music or creating art, kind of finds this really wonderful equilibrium because A, you're sharing your things with a community of people that you care to share those with. B, you're amongst friends, even if they're virtual ones that are like, what's going on? I want to know, how can we, and I know lately, unfortunately, I mean, we've had some people pass recently. We've had some pretty gross, fucked up things that have happened with our, at least with our extended group of friends. And it's really sad. And I think being in a situation where you're on lockdown or not able to connect in the same way really does play into that. So again, I think the how much value there is to sharing your own personal experiences with that. And, you just never know who you're helping. And I think that's really great, man. I really do.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I mean, that's, like I said, that's all why I do it.
Yeah. Let me shift gears here just a little bit. And there are a couple of things I want to ask you about. So you've got the vinyl release coming up soon. What else is going on with the label? What do you guys have? Because I know like your back catalog is crazy. You have so much material. So tell me a little bit about what's on the radar for the label.
Well, I think honestly, like I mentioned earlier, we're taking a little bit of a break. Although by break, I mean we're super busy with getting this record made and busy with, we've got a few releases lined up that we haven't even really started working on yet. So with RB being kind of out of commission for the artwork aspect because of his surgery recently, we're kind of taking a little bit of a break, and there aren't a lot of plans right now for stuff, but we have been receiving. I've been receiving a lot of submissions from artists that are really good. Like I'm really liking some of the stuff. So we're definitely we're going to continue, but we are taking we slowed down a little bit while the record gets made and while our designer heals up, so we can continue. So
all right, excellent. Well, I'm really looking forward to this release. I really am looking forward to this release, and I want to go back to your back catalog when we post this. Post live, we'll have links to your website. We'll have links to all of your Subplot recordings, and it's Subplot Recordings, not Subplot Records, because there's another techno label with that. That is not.
Which I did not know about when I actually came up with the name Subplot Recordings like when I was going to music school 12 years ago at Paramount here in San Francisco. I think we had an assignment where we had to make a kind of a fake label as it was a school assignment, and I called it Subplot Recordings, and it never happened. And so then when I decided to start a label, I called it that, and then after I did that and had a couple of releases out, I noticed there was a Subplot Records, and I thought, oh crap, they're not going to be happy if they. But I haven't heard from them, so I don't. And I know they've. Well, I don't know. They've probably seen our stuff, but
yeah. Yeah, I mean it's all kind of adjacent, right? It feels like they're. I don't know. They don't seem like anybody. I don't know. I mean, it seemed like a standard sort of. All the pictures are black and white and noir.
They're more kind of techno. It's a European label. It's different than Subplot Recordings. The labels are very different. So I don't think.
Yeah, I love the design. Speaking of the design and the designer, I love the visual aesthetic that you guys have been able to put together for Subplot Recordings. It's really amazing. Well,
that's all RB. Well, that's mostly RB. I do have some input. He's wonderful. So here's the thing about RB. He's super talented. I mean, he just wanted to be part of this, and so we're a great team. For each release that comes along, the guy designs like 15 or 20 covers for me.
Oh wow, yeah.
So and it's always half of them are amazing, and so it's always hard to choose which one. But I think that's the secret of the quality of work that we put out, is that he's wonderful and he gives me lots of wonderful things to choose from. So obviously the best of what's already the best from him is going to be good.
Pretty amazing. Well, that's excellent. Well, Jeffrey, thank you so very much for doing this. I really appreciate it. Do you want to do a shout out to anyone before we wrap this up here?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of people I'd like to say hi to, but I think I'll go very stereotypical and just say hi, Mom. I know you're
good call. Excellent.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much. This was a joy, and I really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Jeffrey. This has been Jeffrey Tice, the head honcho founder and label owner of Subplot Recordings. We're going to have links right in the comment section below with all of his information, so you can go buy, download. Don't forget, Friday is Bandcamp Pay Directly to the Artist Day. So
that was last Friday.
They're not doing that on every Friday anymore?
I think it's the first Friday of the month.
Well, go buy it anyway, or just call him. Just call Jeffrey. He'll hook you up. He'll hook you up with the goods. You know, Bitcoin, PayPal, Venmo, carrier pigeon with cold hard cash to San Francisco. Whatever you need to do. But Jeffrey, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time, and we look forward to hearing what comes next from the label.
Great, thanks, Stephen.
All right, man. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.